Welcome, dear brothers and sisters. This is a beautiful green day today. It's still summer. We're in the middle of July and we are into the 17th ordinary Sunday of the year. And the word ordinary Sunday tells us that it is a time of growth, and a time of growth in knowing Jesus, loving Jesus, and deepening our personal relationship with Him. And now, on the 17th Sunday, we see Jesus talking to His people about food, because He works a miracle on food. He multiplies the loaves and the fish, and He feeds about 5,000 people. So our topic today and the title of our meditation is Jesus Feeds Us. Jesus feeds us. Because Jesus is going to present Himself later on in another couple of Sundays as the food of our life. So let's look at food and the importance and the need for food as our first point in our meditation today. Very many parts of the world, because of no rain and no water, no moisture, they have famine. And the world has known some terrible famines where thousands and thousands of people have died. And fortunately, you and I perhaps have not been caught in a famine. But we know one thing: food prices keep going up every year. And getting the food that we want is pretty expensive. So we know the importance of food. And when there's famine, then we have some terrible days ahead of us. And we also have drought. And we also have natural disasters that destroy food. For example, in Nepal recently, where there were all these earthquakes, and it destroyed so much of their crops, so much of their fields, and so much of their animal and livestock, and food is pretty scarce there. So you see how much we need food, and we need food to grow. Food is a sign of growth, and some of us like food more, some of us moderate our food, some of us do penance by fasting, so that we grow in the appreciation and deepen our relationship with God. So the importance of food. Without food, you and I will starve to death. So food is an important aspect in our life. The second aspect of our life is the human need for food. And what kind of food? There are different stages of food, different degrees of food. For example, the physical food that we all love. We love to have a good dinner, a good breakfast, a good snack, and healthy food. Food to build us up. But there's also a different kind of food, intellectual food. That's where we go to school, university, get a degree, and we train our mind, and we educate ourselves. And the higher the education, more opportunities, and we earn more money. Again, there's another level of food, and that is emotional food. Emotional food is where we nourish our relationships. We're all a bundle of relationships. We are born into relationships, we live in a relationship, and we nourish our relationships together. So relationships are very important, and we need to nourish those relationships, and we call that emotional relationships. And then finally, there's the fourth level, which is our spiritual food, our food for the soul. And we have to go inside ourselves, understand ourselves, and we know that we have an inner self where we have to feed with food. And that is spiritual food. And that is where our relationship with our God comes in, our relationship with Jesus. And we have a soul to save, remember that. And we need to nourish that relationship with Jesus so that we can save that soul. And in all this, the bottom line of all this is that Jesus feeds us. Jesus is our real food, and He knows and recognizes our great need for food, our hunger for food on its various levels. As I said, physical level, emotional level, intellectual level, and above all, the spiritual level. And He offers Himself to us as food. And He says, man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from God's mouth. So Jesus is aware of our need for food. And he himself was tempted in the desert when he fasted for 40 days. The devil knew his weakness. He was hungry. So the devil comes and tempts Jesus in his weakness. And what does he say? Look at all these rocks, he says. Plenty of rocks here. And you have the power, Jesus. Why don't you convert these rocks into the best bread? And Jesus says, from his hunger, he says, man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from God's mouth. So Jesus knows that we are hungry, that we are starving. Our great desire is for food, and we need food to build us up intellectually, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. The fourth thing, Jesus begins by giving us the best physical food when the people were hungry. And that's the gospel for today from John chapter 6. Jesus is seeing that big crowd of people because he was preaching to them, and he kept them till late evening. And then he told his disciples, go and get some food. And they said, where can we get so much of food to feed so much of people here? So he said, what do you have? And then Andrew comes along and says, here's a little boy with 5 loaves and 2 fish. What can that be enough? Bring it out. And then Jesus works his mighty miracle of the multiplication of bread and fish. And he gives them the best food. Everybody had that food to eat and had belly full, the best bread in town, and that took them by shock. And this is the miracle of the loaves. And they had the best food in the town. What was the response of the people? When they had this food, they said, wow, here is the man that we should keep in our midst. Why? Because they wanted to make him king so that they can use him as a vending machine. Press a button and out comes the best bread in town. And we don't have to work, and all our cares are taken care of. But actually, they missed the point. Jesus gave them the best bread as a foretaste of the real bread that he was going to give them later on. So, what was their response? They wanted to make him king. They didn't get it. Do you get it? Do you understand the profound meaning of this beautiful miracle of the multiplication of the loaves and the 2 fish? What was Jesus getting at? By feeding his people physically, he was telling them something very profound, that he is going to be the real food. On this beautiful Sunday, it's good to take some time off in your personal life and spend some time in quietness and ask yourself, what food am I really eating? Not only the physical food, examine the physical food that you're eating. Are you eating the right food? Because that's important. We are stewardships of our body, and we have to take care of our bodies. And therefore, we have to eat the right food. And when we eat the right food, then truly we are looking after our health. The second thing is, what kind of food do I feed my soul with? Why do I ask this question? Because when there's a problem in my life, where do I go? How do I face those problems? What is it that gives me sustenance in my life to hold my life up when it is falling apart? What is it that brings me together? That is the food that Christ wants to give us. And that is why in the next couple of Sundays, we're going to hear Jesus, how he's going to give us the bread of life and what he really says about the bread of life. And we need to keep our ear close to the ground, to listen to Jesus and to get to know how he's going to present himself as the real food in our life. What is it that you feed yourself on intellectually, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And remember, whatever we may believe, whatever I may say, whatever belief that I hold, Jesus is the bread of life. Jesus is the food of life. And if I don't eat Jesus, then I'm missing out on something very, very important in my life. There's an element that is missing in my life. So keep your ear close to the ground. Listen. What is Jesus telling you? And when you're sincere in listening to what the Lord is telling you and take it from His word, then truly you're on the path of receiving the bread of life. Jesus feeds us with the bread of life.